Well, it's funny that you mentioned her. I actually took a blood. We took a an oath one night. I vaguely remember this. I was at the bar, so I wasn't totally sentient. And somebody came in, and we had a ceremony where you had to swear over a beer, which is sacred fluids to military guys, right? So it was a sacred oath. And the oath was that at the end, when when three people die, we are supposed to find where they're buried and piss on their grave. And I'll tell you who the three are. Of course, you already named the first one. Jane, I didn't know it was a machine gun Fonda. Okay, and I'll tell you a story about her. The second is John Kerry. John Kerry of course, he was a presidential candidate, and if he had been elected, that would have been the ultimate slap in the face to every guy who served in Vietnam. He came back and went before Congress and said that most of the soldiers in Vietnam were war criminals. So he's number two on the list. And the third guy is Dan Rather. So I hope that answers my question about Jane Fonda. I don't know if you heard this story or not about her, but she was, I think it was the prisons, the guys that were mostly pilots, Navy and Air Force. They named the prisons, and one was called the Hanoi Hilton, which just a joke because it was a horrible place. But anyway, they told the guys that were they brought in and gave them clean uniforms and showered them down and said, "You're going to have a distinguished visitor this evening." And so they didn't know who, they didn't tell them who it was, so they got all excited. Well, one of the things they taught us was the most important thing if you're a POW is you got to get your name out somehow. You have a much greater chance of surviving if we know that you're a POW. And so what happened is these guys took little slips of paper and they wrote their name on it. Well, they come to this meeting, and of course they didn't know who the celebrity was, but it was Jane Fonda. And she goes around and shakes each of their hands. Well, when they did that, they passed this note to her that had their name on it. She went around to the entire room, and then she walked to the front, walked up to the commander of the camp, and gave him all of the paper right in front of him. And that night, they were beaten so bad that three of them died. And that's Jane Fonda.